So we've come to the address, and this is the final day of the themed week, the wisdom of each other. And today's theme is living out wisdom. During the week, there has been time for talks and discussions, time to read the biblical references to wisdom, time to learn how to recognize the occasions when wisdom might be present. That might be in a group or it might be in a one-to-one. And there's been time to consider how to tune into what is happening when you're there, when wisdom is going on around you. Do you recognize it? Do you feel part of it? And hopefully this will lead to a deeper understanding of wisdom and a greater expectation of actually experiencing it. In the letter of James, we're encouraged to ask for wisdom. So there's reason to believe the spirit of wisdom will be enriching lives and relationships in our churches and house groups in the days ahead. But today I'm going to make a few observations about how we might go about living out wisdom. Because there are characters in the Bible who got it very wrong, and we want to avoid that. We might be the recipients of wisdom from someone else, or find that we're used by God to impart wisdom to others. And while it's enjoyable to share and learn with a nice group in a safe place, which is what this week has been, it may be a bit more daunting once we return to our homes and churches and start to deal with the subject on our own. So, the wisdom literature is collected in various books in the Bible. The main ones are Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon. And we can read God's wisdom there. And much of it emanates from Solomon. Not all of it, but a good proportion of it. But how Solomon actually lived his life while his wisdom was being recorded and imparted is found elsewhere in the Bible, particularly in the books of 1 Kings and 2 Chronicles. Both mention the story of Solomon's request for wisdom when God met him in a dream. And God was so pleased with Solomon for this request that he gave him wisdom and understanding and knowledge, plus all the other things that he could have asked for. That is, wealth, possessions, honor, and much more. In fact, it says in the Bible that Solomon was promised wealth, possessions, and honor such as no king who was before you ever had, and none after you will have. Solomon was number one. What could go wrong? Solomon is very well known for his wide-ranging wisdom. Perhaps the best story is the one about the 2 prostitutes and the argument over whose baby it was. That wisdom is so simple and so amazing. And why didn't someone else think of that first? And yet, Solomon's reign ended very badly. And why was that? Well, the book of 2 Chronicles, which is the second half of the book of Chronicles, records how Solomon gave orders to build the temple for the name of the Lord and a royal palace for himself. It sets out all the requirements to the builders, what the furnishings were, they were put in place, how the ark was returned to the temple, and how finally the temple of the Lord was filled with the glory of the Lord. These were big things that were happening. These were restoring Israel. And then Solomon gave a long prayer of thanksgiving and petition to the Lord, which the Lord heard and answered, and he dedicated the temple to the Lord. And Chronicles records other activities in Solomon's life. What he built, the festivals he had, the gold, the amount of gold he collected. It reports how the Queen of Sheba, who was a magnificent monarch down to the south, visited. And she thought she brought a lot of gifts for him, but she went away with more than she brought. Such splendor will never be seen again. Solomon was greater in riches and wisdom and all the other kings of the earth, and he died after 40 years. And his son Rehoboam succeeded him. All sounds rather good. But 1 Kings reports the seedier side of Solomon's life. Soon after his accession, he made an alliance with Pharaoh and married his daughter. He also allowed people to continue sacrificing at the high places. The people were not meant to be sacrificing at high places. They were meant to be sacrificing at the feet of the mighty God. Solomon's many marriages were used for political purposes to make alliances. And therefore his harem contained hundreds of foreign women. Solomon tied himself to so many foreign powers that he totally alienated himself from God. Where was wisdom in all that? Did his role as king somehow persuade him that he didn't have to obey God's laws? In Deuteronomy, there's a verse that says, the king must not take many wives, or his heart will be led astray. He must not accumulate large amounts of silver and gold. Solomon's disobedience to this command produced the result that was predictable. His wives turned him to idolatry. I'm going to read a passage from 1 Kings that rather sums up the sorry story. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter: Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, "You must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods." Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Moloch, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely, as David his father had done. On a hill east of Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and for Moloch, the detestable god of the Ammonites. He did the same for all his foreign wives, who burned incense and offered sacrifices to their gods. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Although he had forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. So the Lord said to Solomon, "Since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees, which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father, I will not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Yet I will not tear the whole kingdom from him, but will give him one tribe for the sake of David my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen." Solomon even built high places on the east hill in Jerusalem. And we read that the Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from God, even after the Lord had appeared to him twice. And the consequences were that Solomon lost his kingdom. And why do I major on the bad things of Solomon rather than the good? Because if it can happen to someone like Solomon, it's a warning to us. The wisdom Solomon was given had gone by the time he needed it. He had not looked after his wisdom. Wisdom needs to be treated with the greatest of respect and nurtured. So the theme today is living out wisdom. And that's what we have to do. And we need to live it out well. And that relies on us. It relies on us to keep our hearts in tune with God's hearts and our eyes fixed on him. Solomon can teach us that even though God gave him the wisdom and the understanding and the wealth and the honor, they can all be lost if our hearts are turned away. So what of that advice is available to us to live out wisdom well? I'm going to offer you a number of verses, and I've got a little sheet with those verses on them, so you don't need to write them down. You can take one away with you afterwards. And firstly, I start with Job. Job chapter 1, verse 1 starts, Job was a blameless, upright man who fears God and shuns evil. A verse at the end of Job states, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. To shun evil is understanding. We've all heard it before, we've all read it. It's still very important. And the second one is even more tempting. This is the piece of paper I'm going to give you. But it says in Genesis 3, verse 6, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it and gave it to her husband. Wisdom is great when it stays at a distance. When it comes near and we get involved with it, it's powerful stuff. It has the good and the bad. In Proverbs chapter 11, verse 2, it says, know that with humility comes wisdom. Humility is a vital ingredient of how we live out wisdom. The full verse says, when pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. And to back that up, there's another verse that we would probably know very well, but rather emphasizes the point. It's Matthew 11, verses 28 to 30, and you will have heard this so many times. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I think it's the only place in the Bible where Jesus comments on his heart. And he says, I'm humble in heart. That is the importance of humility in wisdom. And James has a lot to say about wisdom. Chapter 3, verse 13 says, who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. And another warning that is useful for us from 1 John chapter 4. Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. This is how you recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. But every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming and even now is already in the world. Again, that is saying wisdom is wonderful, wisdom is dangerous. And one more that I believe is relevant. Isaiah 55. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. If we ever think we become wise, beware. We don't know the Lord. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. So, if I finish off to say, however much we know about the theory of receiving wisdom or imparting wisdom, all that we've learnt this week, effective practice relies on our relationship with God. And it is the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, who will be our guide and our enabler. So let's finish on something that Solomon did say, I think. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Submit to him in everything, and he will make your paths straight.